Millionaire rushes to the hospital with his black maid, and the outcome shocks everyone. Zuri Holloway arrived at the Everhart mansion as a simple maid, but quickly won the heart of little Elias, a boy marked by the loss of his mother. Invisible in the eyes of Cassian, the distant and cold millionaire, she hid the pain and secrets life had dealt her, carrying a past filled with injustice and a body already showing signs of exhaustion. Between quiet encounters, unexpected bonds, and revelations that would change everything, the relationship among the three began to transform not only a house, but entire destinies. A story of love, redemption, and courage that shows how sometimes heroes come from the most unexpected places and forever change the course of a family. Before we begin this emotional story, I want to make a special request. Leave a comment saying where you're watching from. I'd really love to know how far our stories are reaching. And if you enjoy love stories full of emotion, overcoming challenges, and heartwarming endings, make sure to subscribe to the channel. That way, you won't miss a single episode, and you'll also help our channel grow more and more. The morning in Houston was damp when Zuri May Holloway stepped off the bus and walked toward the iron gates of the Everhart mansion. She carried a simple bag slung over her shoulder, and in the pocket of her freshly pressed apron was a floral handkerchief, carefully folded, a keepsake from her mother. Her skin was a warm caramel brown, her golden brown eyes reflecting sweetness and attentiveness, and her curly hair was pulled into a loose bun, a few strands falling across her forehead. Before pressing the doorbell, she took a deep breath. The dizziness that had lingered for days stepped closer, but she smiled firmly, as if telling the pain to wait. The door opened with almost mechanical precision. Cassian Cass Everhart appeared like a flash of cold light in the wide hallway. Fair-skinned, light brown hair combed neatly, close-shaven beard, an impeccable dark blue suit shaping the rigid posture of someone who controls everything, or tries to. His grayish-blue eyes sized up Zuri, as if she were a freshly delivered package. "Zuri Holloway, right?" he said, not offering his hand. "The housekeeper will show you the routines. Schedule is sacred. No delays, no improvisation." "My son has a very specific agenda." "Yes, Mr. Everhart," Zuri replied, keeping her voice low and steady. "Thank you for the opportunity." He was already turning away when a boy's voice echoed from upstairs. "Dad, is she the lady who talked to me at the door?" Elias Reese Everhart, 9 years old, appeared at the railing. He was slim, with messy blonde hair and very light blue eyes, curious but a bit sad. He wore a science-themed t-shirt with planets, mismatched socks, and clutched a dinosaur book to his chest. "She's the new staff member, Elias," Cassian said dryly. "Just stick to your schedule." And he was already back on his phone. Elias carefully came down the stairs and stopped in front of Zuri, like someone measuring distance with their heart. "Do you know how to make porridge with cinnamon?" he asked, almost in a whisper. Zuri smiled with her eyes. "I do. And I can add a little bit of vanilla. Do you like that?" The boy nodded shyly. "That's how Mommy used to make it." Zuri swallowed her emotion and made her way to the kitchen. The space had light marble countertops, stainless steel appliances, a window overlooking the pristine backyard, and the expensive silence of a house far too big. As she gathered the ingredients, the world wobbled for a moment. Zuri steadied herself on the cold, polished counter and, without drawing attention, breathed through her nose. Counting to 5. The dizziness backed off. "Can you tell me how your mom used to make it?" she asked, stirring the milk with a wooden spoon. "She'd blow on the spoon 3 times before I tasted it," Elias answered, climbing onto the tall stool. "And she'd sing a soft song." Zuri blew on the spoon 3 times, just like he said, and hummed gently, barely a whisper. Like this? The boy gave a real smile. Like that. Cassian walked quickly past the kitchen, a leather briefcase in hand. Elias, you have class at 9. Zuri, don't touch my son's prescriptions. If anything comes up, speak to the housekeeper. Understood? She replied respectfully. As he reached the door, Zuri added gently, the porridge has little sugar and just the right amount of cinnamon. He ate all of it. Cassian nodded without looking. Good. And left? Zuri sat beside the boy as he finished eating. She noticed how Elias handled the utensils hesitantly, as if asking permission to exist. If you'd like, I can wait outside your classroom while you study, she said. Just so you know someone's nearby? You really would. His eyes lit up. It's just, I don't like when the house gets too big. I will. Zuri adjusted the handkerchief in her pocket, a gesture she made when she needed to remember who she was. And if the house gets too big, we'll shrink it with stories. Later, while gathering the sheets from the guest room, the pain tightened around her chest like a knot. Storm clouds gathered inside her. She leaned her forehead against the light wood wardrobe and waited for the wave to pass. In her bag, the bottle of expired pills rattled with the hollow sound of loose capsules. Zuri closed her eyes. Not now, she whispered, like someone bargaining with fate. The fear of losing the job, and with it, rent, was a shadow sitting at the foot of the bed. By late afternoon, Elias was stacking dinosaurs on the living room rug, where tall shelves held books that seemed never touched. Zuri, which one is your favorite? He asked, showing a smudged triceratops. The one with the horns. He looks tough, but he just wants to protect who he loves, she replied, sitting on the rug next to him. What about yours? The same. He looked at her with the focus of a grown-up. You look tired. I just need some water, she said lightly, and a story to shrink the house. Elias pressed his ear to her chest, a spontaneous gesture of a child seeking rhythm. Your heart beats fast. That's because I'm in a hurry to see you happy. Zuri brushed the boy's hair. Now let's put the dinosaurs away before your dad gets home. Moments later, Cassian walked in. His expensive watch gleamed under the hall light. Elias, homework? Zuri, the company will send a new task list. Don't change anything without authorization. He noticed the dinosaurs arranged by color and size, the porridge bowl already washed, the house showing quiet signs of life. Something in his expression hesitated, a muscle wanting to soften, but the mask returned to place. Mr. Everhart, Zuri said politely, if Elias wants, I can stay nearby until he falls asleep. Cassian looked up, surprised by the offer. Does he usually need that? Elias answered first. I sleep when Zuri stays in the hallway, just listening to her breathe. There was a brief silence. The father looked at the son, the maid, and the distance between their two worlds. All right. But just for tonight. Thank you, said Zuri. Tomorrow I'll bring some chamomile tea with honey. Helps the body remember to rest. No improvising with food. Cassian interrupted automatically. Talk to me first. Of course, she replied, keeping calm. At bedtime, Zuri pulled the light blanket up to Elias's chin. The room had a moon-shaped lamp and constellation stickers on the ceiling. 3 puffs and 1 wish, she said, blowing into the palm of her hand, like she had earlier. What wish should we keep? That you'll be okay, he said, his eyes already heavy, and that the house doesn't get big. Deal. Zuri stayed in the hallway, sitting in a small chair, the floral handkerchief between her fingers. She listened to the boy's breathing slow down. When she tried to get up, her vision blurred again. She leaned against the cold wall, breathing deeply, as if calling her courage back into her body. She straightened up, walked to the kitchen, filled a glass with water, and took small sips. Then she caught her reflection in the window. A woman who used to be a head nurse, now wearing a maid's uniform, fighting not to disappear. "Not today," she whispered to the reflection. "Today I stay." The hallway remained silent when Elias woke in the middle of the night. He walked with small steps to the chair where Zuri still sat, the floral handkerchief in her fingers. Her eyes opened slowly, tired but tender. The boy rested his head on her arm and murmured, "I dreamed Mommy came back, but when I woke up it was you here." Zuri felt her heart tighten. She ran her hand through the boy's blonde hair and replied softly, "I can't be your mother, Elias. But I can take care of you in my own way, and that, I promise." He lifted his face, lit only by the soft glow of the bedroom lamp. "Can I call you Aunt Zuri, just so I can feel like your family?" Emotion made her breath catch for a second. But she nodded. "Of course you can. And I'll honor that title every single day." The next morning, as Cassian got ready to leave with his leather briefcase in hand, Elias ran into the kitchen. "Aunt Zuri, you're picking me up after piano class, right?" the boy said out loud, as naturally as if she had always been part of the routine. Cassian frowned. "Since when is she your aunt, Elias?" The boy answered without hesitation, "Since yesterday. She takes care of me like one." Cassian didn't reply. He adjusted the watch on his wrist and left, leaving only the cold echo of the closing door behind. That afternoon, Elias began to share little secrets. Sitting on the living room rug surrounded by building blocks, he confessed, "Sometimes I pretend to be sick just so I won't be alone here." Zuri took a deep breath. Her body still throbbed with pain, but she held steady. "You don't have to pretend, Elias. I'll be around, even if I'm tired. I won't leave you alone." The boy smiled, and in that smile was a spark of peace his father never noticed. Days later, Cassian hosted a business dinner at home. The setting was elegant, a long dark wood table, crystal chandelier reflecting the wine in the glasses, guests dressed in formal attire. Zuri moved discreetly, clearing plates with skill, ignored like part of the furniture. Elias, hidden behind the hallway door, watched with suspicion. In the middle of conversation, one of Cassian's friends remarked, "Your son seems calmer. What changed?" Cassian took a sip of wine before replying, "A new employee? She's good with Elias. But she's just a cleaning lady." The words hit Zuri like a blade. Outwardly, she stayed calm, but her hands trembled as she held the tray. Her heart pounded, not just from the physical pain she carried, but from the weight of being reduced to nothing. Elias, who had heard everything from the hallway, ran to her after dinner. His tear-filled eyes begged for answers. "Why did he say that about you, Aunt Zuri? You're not just a cleaning lady." She knelt down, ignoring the stab in her chest, and hugged him tight. "Don't worry about what grown-ups say, Elias. What matters is what we feel inside." She touched the boy's heart with her fingertips. "And I know that here, between us, there's something bigger than any title." Elias cried softly on her shoulder, and Zuri realized her silent fight was no longer just for herself. It was also for that boy who had chosen her as his safe place. Upstairs, Cassian watched from the balcony, unmoving. For the first time, he hesitated in the face of his own coldness. But soon he turned back inside, as if still not ready to see what was right in front of him. The afternoon sun shone through the mansion's tall stained glass windows, casting golden reflections across the marble floor. Zuri climbed the main staircase slowly, with a bucket in one hand and a cloth over her shoulder. The house's silence, broken only by the distant sound of Elias playing piano, made each fast heartbeat echo louder inside her. Halfway up, the world spun suddenly. The walls turned in circles. Her breathing grew shallow. She gripped the dark wooden railing tightly, trying not to fall. "Aunt Zuri!" Elias's voice came from the top of the stairs. He was watching from above, his pale eyes wide with worry. She forced a smile, even as her body trembled. "Auntie's just tired, sweetie. I just came up too fast." The boy rushed down and grabbed her hand. "You're pale. Want me to get Dad?" Zuri took a deep breath, trying to steady herself on the step. No need. It's past. Let's keep this between us, okay? I don't want to worry anyone." Elias hesitated but nodded slowly. "Promise you won't fall. I promise." She stroked his hair, swallowing the pain spreading through her chest. Later, in the small room they had given her at the back of the house, Zuri opened the dresser drawer. There, hidden beneath simple clothes, was a bottle of expired medicine. The labels were already faded, but she knew exactly how many pills were left. She placed one in her mouth and swallowed it dry, tasting the bitterness. "You've got to get through, at least for today," she muttered to herself, sitting on the edge of the bed. Her eyes fixed on the ceiling, where the paint had started to peel. The thought hurt more than her body. No health insurance, no way to afford a private doctor, and she would never step foot again in the hospital where she had worked for almost 10 years. There, they had taken not just her career, but her dignity, blaming her for a medical error that wasn't hers. "They erased me like I never even existed," she whispered, clutching the floral handkerchief she always kept in her pocket. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. "Aunt Zuri, it was Elias. Can you come read to me before I sleep?" Zuri quietly wiped the sweat from her forehead, tucked the medicine bottle back into the drawer, and replied softly, "I'm on my way, sweetheart." In the boy's room, she opened the adventure book and sat beside him on the bed. Her heart still throbbed painfully, but her voice came out calm, as if nothing had happened. Elias snuggled against her shoulder. "You smell different than Mommy," he said, almost asleep. "But you make me feel just as safe." Zuri felt tears burn, but didn't let them fall. She kissed his forehead and said, "Then it's already worth being here." As Elias drifted off, Cassian stood at the doorway, watching silently. He didn't notice the slight tremble in Zuri's hands as she turned the page, nor the shadow of pain hiding behind her smile. He only closed the door gently, carrying with him an image he couldn't explain. His son finally at peace in the arms of someone he still insisted on overlooking. In the empty room, after everyone had gone to sleep, Zuri felt the pressure in her chest again. Leaning against the cold wall, she fought the growing thought that her body was demanding an old debt. A whisper escaped her lips. "How long can I keep hiding this? If you've made it this far, comment strength. That way I'll know you're feeling the intensity of the story, and will confuse those who only read the comments." The sun was already setting behind the tall buildings of Houston when the house fell into a strange silence. The laundry room, usually filled with the scent of fresh soap and the low hum of the dryer, now held an unexpected drama. Zuri was alone, folding still warm sheets, alipacs, when her vision blurred. Her heart raced, her breath failed, as if the air had vanished from the room. Her legs gave out, and she collapsed sideways, her face damp with sweat. She tried to call for help, but only a hoarse sound escaped her throat. Elias was looking for Aunt Zuri around the house. When he opened the laundry room door, his bright eyes widened. He saw her lying on the cold floor, her hand pressed to her chest, tears rolling down her face against her will. "Aunt Zuri!" he shouted, his voice cracking. He ran to her and grabbed her hand. "Talk to me, please. Don't fall asleep now." Zuri tried to smile, but there was no strength left. She only moved her lips silently, begging for air. Terrified, Elias let go of her hand and ran down the hallway. "Dad!" "Zuri is dying. She's not breathing." Cassian was in his office, surrounded by papers and charts on the computer. When he heard his son scream, the pen fell from his hand. That tone of desperation was not normal for Elias. He stood up abruptly, his heart pounding in sync with the urgency in the boy's voice. When he got to the laundry room, he saw the scene. Zuri lying on the floor, her body tense, her skin damp. Elias was crying, trying to wake her up with small touches. "She's not talking, Dad. Nyat, do something." Cassian knelt without thinking. For the first time in a long time, control slipped through his fingers. He touched her face and felt how cold her skin was. "My God," he murmured quietly before lifting Zuri into his arms. Her weight wasn't just physical. It was the realization that this woman, once invisible to him, had supported his son's life more than he himself had. Elias ran behind him, sobbing. "Don't let her die, Dad. She takes care of me. She's the only one who understands me." Cassian strode down the hallway, his breathing heavy, not from hurry, but from fear. The memories of his wife fell over him like a ghost. He had carried her like this once and didn't make it in time. The fear of losing another life before his eyes was tearing him apart. Zuri, in his arms, opened her eyes for a moment and tried to speak. She only managed to whisper, almost inaudibly, "No, hospital." But the strength left her again. Cassian picked up his pace toward the garage. "You're going now, Zuri, and you're going to fight. I won't lose you too." Elias was holding on to his father's suit jacket, crying breathlessly. "Promise she'll be okay." Cassian didn't answer. His hardened eyes, trembling hands, and racing heart said everything. He had no answers, only the certainty that he would do the impossible. The automatic gate opened, and the black car slid down the street lit by the last shades of twilight. In the back seat, Elias held the maid's hand as if his life depended on it. Zuri was drifting in and out of consciousness, and each second weighed like an eternity. The car engine roared on the wide avenue as Houston's lights flashed like neon streaks past the windows. In the back seat, Zuri was lying on her side, her head resting on Elias's lap. The boy, with his small hands, clutched her fingers tightly, as if trying to stop life from slipping through them. "Aunt Zuri, stay with me. Please don't close your eyes," he cried, his tears soaking her simple dress. "You promised you'd never leave me alone." Cassian's eyes, reflected in the rearview mirror, caught the scene, and it hit him like an invisible blow. His hands trembled on the wheel, his breathing heavy. He felt the crushing weight of guilt. How had he gone months without noticing this woman carried such pain, now so visible? Not this time. Not this time. He muttered, like a mantra. Suddenly, a brutal memory overtook him. The night his wife fainted in their old house's living room. Her body also weighed in his arms. The desperation was the same. But that time there was no salvation. The sound of the flatline monitor still echoed in his mind, like a curse. He closed his eyes for a moment, and the car nearly veered off the road. Elias screamed, "Dad, faster! She's cold!" Cassian refocused and stepped on the gas. The leather steering wheel creaked under the pressure of his hands. "Hang in there. Zuri, you're not leaving. I won't let you." Zuri opened her eyes briefly, her eyelids heavy, her breath shallow. But she saw Elias's face leaning over hers. She forced a faint smile. "Little one, Don't cry. Remember the song, 3 puffs and a wish. Elias leaned in and blew 3 times into the palm of her hand, sobbing. My wish is that you stay alive. Hear me, alive with me and Dad. Cassian heard that and almost lost his breath. The word Dad didn't refer only to him. It included all 3 of them, as if they were already a family. A lump formed in his throat. The car ran a yellow light and turned onto the avenue leading to the private hospital. The silence inside the vehicle was deafening, broken only by Elias's sobs and Cassian's tense whispers. Not this time. I'm going to save you. As they neared the hospital's lit entrance, Zuri's eyes closed again. Elias cried out once more, his voice breaking. She's not answering! Cassian slammed on the brakes in front of the emergency entrance. His heart was pounding so hard it felt like it would rip through his chest. In seconds, he jumped out of the car and pulled Zuri into his arms, trembling with fear, but without hesitation. Elias ran behind him, clinging to his father's arm. The ER's automatic door opened, revealing doctors in white coats rushing toward them. The scene froze in Cassian's eyes. It was like reliving the night he lost his wife. But this time, he wasn't going to surrender to fate. The emergency room hallway felt like a place where time stood still. The harsh brightness of the lights reflected on the polished floor, making the environment even colder and more impersonal. The hurried footsteps of doctors and nurses mixed with the distant sound of heart monitors, creating a tense symphony. Cassian paced back and forth, his hands clasped behind his neck, his gaze unfocused, unable to settle on anything. Elias, small and vulnerable on the blue plastic chair, held Zuri's floral handkerchief to his chest like a shield, as if that piece of fabric could keep her alive. Every time a door opened, Cassian looked up suddenly, hoping to hear her name. But it never was. His heart beat out of rhythm, as if his entire body rejected the weight. Until finally, a female doctor in a white coat appeared. She held a clipboard in her hands and carried in her eyes the weight of someone bringing news that could change lives. She approached with a serious expression and called, "Mr. Everhart." Cassian took 2 steps forward, holding his breath. The doctor adjusted her glasses, her voice firm but restrained. The patient is stable for now. We'll need to keep her under observation. She has a significant cardiac history and can't keep ignoring the signs. He exhaled suddenly, relieved not to hear the word he feared most. Loss. But his mind latched onto another part of her sentence. History. What do you mean? Did you already have information on her? The doctor looked at the papers with the care of someone who knows each word carries weight. Actually, yes. Zuri Holloway worked for years in our hospital network, head nurse at St. Mary's, a reference in emergency care. There are records of commendations, patient letters, recognition from doctors themselves. Didn't you know? Cassian froze, as if hit by an invisible blow. His face turned pale. No, to me she was just. The sentence died in his mouth, poisoned by shame. Elias, with a fragile and trembling voice, broke the silence. Just the cleaning lady. Right, Dad? That's what you said at dinner. His son's words hit like stones. The hallway felt even colder. Cassian looked away, unable to face such innocent, truthful judgment. He turned to the doctor, searching for an exit. But if she was so respected, why isn't she working at the hospital anymore? The doctor let out a deep sigh, as if reliving a wound that should never have existed. It says here that 3 years ago, she was accused of negligence in a serious case. A patient died during a procedure, and the medical team blamed Zuri. But She looked up, her voice now heavy with indignation. According to the internal records, the mistake wasn't hers. It was a surgeon's error. But well, she was the only black nurse on the unit. She was dismissed quietly, Puni, without a fight. No lawyer would take her case. Elias's chest rose and fell quickly. He clutched the handkerchief tighter to his heart, as if trying to shield her from the past. So they blamed Aunt Zuri just because of her skin color. Cassian closed his eyes, feeling his blood boil with shame and anger. Her image reformed in his mind violently. No longer an invisible employee, but a wronged woman, carrying a burden she bore alone. "My God," he murmured, his voice nearly breaking. "And I treated her like she was nothing." The doctor placed her hand gently on his arm. She survived something that would have destroyed many. But the body keeps score, the heart even more. What she needs now is support, not more silence. Cassian nodded, unable to form words. His eyes were drawn to the glass window of the hospital room. Inside, Zuri lay unconscious, wires attached to her chest, her face peaceful despite the silent war waging inside her. The sight weighed on him like never before. For the first time, Cassian Everhart, the man who believed he controlled everything, realized he had ignored the greatest strength ever to stand under his roof. Beside him, Elias whispered, tears running down his young face. "She always took care of me. Now we have to take care of her. Dad." Cassian turned to his son, and in that moment, he couldn't argue. There was no defense, no pride left to hold on to. Only the truth, naked and painful. If you've made it this far, comment justice. That way I'll know you're following every detail of the story, and we'll confuse those who only read the comments. The days that followed turned into an unexpected routine, nearly unthinkable for anyone who knew Cassian Everhart. The man whose schedule had once been packed with meetings, contracts, and corporate flights now spent entire afternoons at the hospital, sitting in a chair that had begun to mold itself to his frame. There was no urgency in his voice, no phone calls interrupting, just the silent presence of a father and a man slowly rediscovering himself. Elias, meanwhile, had become the spark of life in the room. He ran down the corridor with quick steps, his wide smile anticipating the moment he'd see Zuri. He brought colorful drawings, children's books he read aloud, and even small flowers picked from the mansion's garden to decorate the bedside. "Aunt Zuri, look, I made another drawing. It's the three of us at the park. Remember when you said stories make the house feel smaller? I think parks make the world smaller." He handed her the paper with pride, and Cassian leaned over to look too. And there, in front of the simplicity of a child's drawing, the millionaire felt a warmth in his chest he'd never known before, a warmth that didn't come from awards, contracts, or figures. At first, Cassian remained silent. He just observed. But his gestures gave away what his mouth still didn't dare say. He gently adjusted Zuri's blanket, checked the monitor tracking her heartbeat, adjusted her pillow to keep her comfortable. Each gesture was a silent confession, an unspoken apology. The most awaited moment came when, after days in an almost motionless state, Zuri opened her eyes. Her blurry vision first found Elias's anxious face, holding her hand tightly. "I knew you'd wake up. I asked 3 times, blew, and wished. It worked." His smile filled the room with hope. Zuri, still weak, smiled back. Her eyes then scanned the room until they landed on Cassian. He was standing at the door, no longer wearing an expensive suit, just a simple shirt. He looked smaller, more human, vulnerable. He took a few steps toward her, pulled up a chair, and sat beside the bed, hesitant. "You shouldn't be here all the time, Mr. Everhart," Zuri said, her voice low but firm. Cassian gently interrupted. Without arrogance, Cassian. At least here, call me that. And if I'm here, it's because I failed to see you before. I won't fail again. The words echoed like a promise. Zuri closed her eyes, overcome with emotion. Elias looked at his father with a new kind of pride, as if, for the first time, he saw something more than coldness in him. But the change didn't stop in that room. Inspired by Zuri's quiet example, Cassian began visiting the hospital's pediatric wing. He didn't enter as a sponsor of the company that funded the equipment, but as a man willing to feel. He spoke with children whose eyes were tired, handed out toys, listened to stories from exhausted mothers. There, he saw the invisible strength he had once ignored, and understood that power wasn't about signing contracts, but about showing up at the right moment. Returning to the room that same afternoon, he found a scene that marked him forever. Zuri was sleeping peacefully, and Elias had dozed off holding her hand, still laced with hers. Cassian walked over quietly, adjusted his son's blanket, and watched the two of them. In a low voice, he confessed to himself, "I didn't know how absent I was, until I learned what it means to truly be present." That night, as he left the hospital, he made an unexpected decision. He called his assistant and canceled all meetings for the following days. He requested time off for the first time in 15 years. For the first time, his priority wasn't the board of directors or the cold numbers of the company. His priority had a name, a child's smile, and a silent strength that, through pain and resilience, had brought life back to his son, and, though he hadn't yet admitted it, to his own heart. The day of discharge arrived under a gray, heavy sky, as if even the weather knew that this goodbye wouldn't be easy. The wind shook the trees around the hospital, and the distant sound of rain promised to fall at any moment. Zuri walked slowly through the long, cold hallways, leaning slightly on the bag slung over her shoulder. Her body was still fragile, weakened from her hospital stay, but her eyes held the determination of someone returning to the mansion, only to close a chapter she no longer believed belonged to her. When she crossed the Everhart living room, her heart beat faster. Elias, seeing her, didn't hesitate. He ran to her and wrapped her in a hug so tight it nearly knocked her off balance. "You came back," he said, teary-eyed, as if he'd waited his whole life for that moment. Zuri stroked his face, forcing a smile that hid her decision. "Just for a moment, little one. I came to say goodbye." The word echoed through the room like thunder. Elias stepped back, shaking his head no, as if refusing to accept a destiny. "No, you can't. We need you. I think Dad does too." Cassian, standing near the fireplace, watched silently. His son's words hit him harder than any advice or accusation he'd ever heard. Slowly, he walked over to Zuri and, for the first time without the rigid posture of a boss, said with a strained voice, "Stay for dinner. Not as an employee, as a guest, as someone who matters." Zuri lowered her eyes. The sincerity in his voice was clear, but the scars inside her were still open and aching. "Cassian, I don't know if I can." Elias didn't let go of her hand. With innocence and determination, he pleaded, "Please, Aunt Zuri, just today. Then you decide." Between resistance and tenderness, Zuri gave in. That night, the mansion felt like a different place. The once cold and oppressive atmosphere had shifted. The table was simply set, without the usual excesses, just white plates, short candles gently lighting the space, and a bottle of wine Cassian had opened himself. Elias sat between the two, but soon, sensing the tension in the air, made up an excuse to grab a book from his room, leaving them alone in a heavy silence. The silence was broken by Cassian, who was trying to find the right words. "I don't know if I'll ever be able to make up for everything you've been through, but I want to try." Zuri raised her eyes slowly, letting the intensity of his gaze reach her. "Words don't change what I lived, Cassian. I was erased, humiliated, and you silenced me too. It's not easy to forget." He took a deep breath, his fingers tapping on the glass like someone searching for courage. "That's why I'm not asking you to forget. Just to let me show, from now on, that I can be different." She didn't reply right away. The dinner continued with small pauses, glances that met and quickly looked away, hands that brushed when reaching for bread. Every gesture seemed to carry more weight than any sentence. In an unexpected moment, Zuri let out a soft laugh while remembering one of Elias's mischievous antics. That sound broke the heaviness in the room. Cassian watched her as if it were the first time, mesmerized. The candlelight reflected in her eyes, and something in him began to collapse, slowly. It wasn't just gratitude, it was something being born, delicate but deep, impossible to ignore. Zuri noticed the look and turned away, placing a hand over her chest, where the fragility of her heart still lingered. "Don't confuse gratitude with something else, Cassian," she said quietly, trying to protect herself from herself. He leaned forward slightly, his voice steady but full of emotion. "And what if it is something else? What if I just realized I spent years chasing numbers, when everything I needed was right here in front of me?" The air between them felt thinner, as if the world had paused to listen to that confession. Zuri closed her eyes for a moment, battling the memory of injustice and the fear of letting herself fall again. The dinner ended with no clear answers, but the silent dance between them had begun. A dance between broken hearts, trying to find a common rhythm amid the chaos. The night had gone on when Elias, worn out from the day, fell asleep on the couch with an open book resting on his chest. The boy's gentle breathing made the pages rise and fall slowly, like a whisper of peace. Zuri covered him gently, brushed the blonde hair from his forehead, and kissed him softly, almost like a mother. When she turned around, she found Cassian standing in the doorway. He watched her in silence, arms crossed, but his eyes revealed a man shattered inside, torn between pride and the need to let it go. They walked together out to the porch. The night air was cool and carried the distant scent of the garden, mixed with the faint hum of the city. The Houston lights glimmered in the distance, flickering like memories that refused to fade. Cassian ran a hand through his hair, restless, hesitating before breaking the silence. "I can't hide it anymore. I've felt something for you for a long time, Zuri. I just didn't know how to deal with it. You come from a world I never learned to see. I hid behind my pride like it could explain the emptiness." Zuri looked him straight in the eye, her gaze filled with tears. The moonlight shimmered on her caramel-toned skin, highlighting the blend of strength and vulnerability that defined her. Her voice came out steady but filled with held-back pain. "You don't need to save me, Cassian. I'm not a victim waiting for a hero. Just don't pretend I don't exist." The words flattened the air like a sentence. Cassian felt the weight on his shoulders but took a step forward. His voice came firm, loaded with emotion. "I'll never deny you again, Zuri. You brought my son back to life. You brought me back. I fell in love with you." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was thick, heavy, almost tangible. Her heart beat so loudly it seemed to echo on the porch, blending with the distant hum of the city, unaware of what was being born there. Tears rolled down her face in slow streaks, revealing the war between reason and emotion. Zuri didn't respond with words. She simply stepped closer, rested her forehead on his shoulder, and let the embrace speak what her mouth couldn't. Cassian held her tightly but carefully, like someone afraid to lose again, like someone who had found something rare and wasn't willing to let it go. Inside the house, Elias, even asleep, seemed to be a part of that moment, breathing in sync with a new family forming, without announcements, without contracts, just with truth. In the midst of pain, loss, and wounds still aching, a space opened. It wasn't the promise of a perfect happy ending, but the certainty that there, on that quiet night, something new had begun, and that life, despite being hard, also knew how to reward hearts brave enough to love again. If you've made it this far, comment hope. That way, I'll know you're feeling the power of this moment, and we'll confuse those who only read the comments. Months had passed since that night when silence spoke louder than words. Time brought visible changes not only in the lives of Cassian and Elias, but also in Zuri's, the once invisible maid, previously treated like a shadow in the mansion, now walked with a steady posture and head held high through the halls of the Everhart Foundation headquarters. The echo of her footsteps, once quiet and almost erased, now rang out before journalists, officials, and healthcare professionals who had gathered to witness a historic moment. Zuri was being introduced as the director of a social project that bore her signature of courage. The program had a purpose greater than any title: to rehire nurses, doctors, and medical assistants who had been unfairly removed from their roles, victims of prejudice and silence, just as she once had been. Cassian stood watching, with Elias by his side, his heart racing. For him, seeing Zuri on that stage was like finally seeing all the greatness that had always been in front of his eyes. She didn't speak with bitterness, but with dignity. Many of us were silenced. Many had their names erased without a chance to defend themselves. Today, we're not just rewriting stories, we're restoring hope. Because no one should be discarded because of their skin color, their background, or the power of their accuser. The auditorium erupted in applause, a standing ovation. Cassian felt a pride that didn't fit in his chest, not only for her, but for Elias, who now had a figure of strength and truth right before his eyes. Overwhelmed with emotion, the boy raised his voice without fear. "That's my mom." Zuri turned, surprised, her eyes full of tears. Elias ran up to the stage and hugged her around the waist tightly, like someone who had finally found the safe place he had always searched for. "You're not just Aunt Zuri. You're the mom I chose." Her heart shattered and healed in the same instant. She knelt before him, gently cupping his face, and replied through tears, "And you're the son I never imagined having, but God gave you to me as a gift." The audience, moved, witnessed not just a speech, but the birth of a new family right before their eyes. Cassian then stepped forward, wrapping both of them in a hug. There were no words, no corporate speeches, no rehearsed lines. Only the honest surrender of a man who, once lost in pride and distance, had learned to rebuild himself alongside the one he once hadn't had the courage to truly see. That night, back home, the scene was different, more intimate, and warmer. Sitting in the living room lit only by the fireplace, Cassian held Zuri's hand firmly and said, "It took me too long to understand. But now I know. What we have isn't a fairy tale. It's something stronger. It's real." She smiled, her calm eyes reflecting the certainty of someone who had survived storms. And real is all we need. Elias, lying on the couch, lifted his sleepy head and added with the simplicity only a child can carry, "We don't need perfection. We need family." The boy's words hung in the air like a final seal on that new life. And so, through triumphs, healed wounds, and love built step by step, the story found its lesson. Not every hero wears a lab coat. Sometimes, they wear a cleaning uniform and, without fanfare, save an entire family just because they never stopped loving, even when no one was watching. And that was our story for today. I really want to know what you think. From 0 to 10, how much did you enjoy this plot full of emotion, resilience, and love? Leave your rating in the comments. Like if this story touched your heart. Share it with someone special. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to catch the next ones. Before you go, I've already picked out another moving story that I'm sure will touch you even more.